Bill Ackman, who's been like telling everybody that this guy was Trojan horsing Islamic jihadism into New York for 6 months. The moment after he wins, he's like, call me, Zoran. Let me know how I can help. I'm like, you're a sociopath, dude. Do you know, like, have you read your own tweets for the last 6 months? Since I don't live in New York, I'm very curious and excited to watch Zohran Mamdani. I'm interested to see how much he actually gets done, that he wants to get done. I'm curious to see the degree to which Albany, the state of New York, works with him versus tries to buck him and refuses to give him what he needs in order to, implement the policies he wants to implement. I'm curious how the party responds to him, whether the Democratic Party embraces him, ignores him, uplifts him. I'm really interested to watch the Mamdani-Trump dynamic. I mean, this morning, Trump was like, I'll help him out a little bit if I have to. Or, he was kind of like giving some sort of weirdly positive overtures towards him, which I thought was bizarre. Bill Ackman, who's been like telling everybody that this guy was Trojan horsing Islamic jihadism into New York for 6 months. The moment after he wins, he's like, call me, Zoran. Let me know how I can help. I'm like, you're a sociopath, dude. Do you know, like, have you read your own tweets for the last 6 months? It's going to be really bizarre. I will say my stake in the ground is, if I had to make a prediction about Zohran Mamdani, I think he is going to try to implement a bunch of really huge, massive policy overhauls like free childcare for, kindergartners and youngers and free buses throughout the city. And he's probably going to not get most of it done. And I think, the sort of really, truly kind of socialist policies are going to slowly degrade some of the economic growth that's happening in New York City, which is doing pretty well right now, all things considered. Weirdly, Eric Adams has kind of had a pretty good tenure despite also being super corrupt. And I just don't think it's going to be that eventful, but I'm curious what you guys think. I mean, I'm sort of mocking and making fun of the right's reaction to this because it's just been so over the top and hysterical, in my opinion. Just like the deport him and he's a radical Muslim and he hates Jews and all this stuff that I think is obviously nonsense. But I'm wondering what your guys read. And then Kmele, maybe we can start with you. I know you've been talking a bit about this in some of your other shows. You're sitting in the belly of the beast right now. What's your read on where we are?
Well, it's interesting. This week, over on the Fifth Column, we've had a number of left of center people who've come into the studio for conversations. And it's interesting. They're also all moderates, and we didn't plan it that way. I wasn't thinking in advance, we should definitely be sure to talk to some people who are left of center because they can give us some perspective on the blue wave that's coming. But it did turn out to be very valuable, I think. Their takes on the election win are pretty measured. They are, optimistic about Mamdani and generally have this perspective that he is going to be trying to achieve things that are actually quite difficult. And that I was even told by one of them that he is perhaps moderating already and is already looking for more pragmatic remedies for addressing the affordability concerns that are there. But I think in virtually all of those cases, they're also looking at other races, and they're paying a little bit more attention to Virginia, a little bit more attention to New Jersey. And the thing that they think is most important is that it's the moderate Democrats who manage to win in those places who are perhaps pointing the way for the party more broadly. And there does seem to be a real disagreement amongst the kind of more progressive social democrat inclined perspective, where someone like AOC will say on the night of the election when this is the direction the country is going in, like the establishment and the party kind of needs to get out of the way and get on board and understand that this is the kind of bold, ambitious leadership that Democrats need going forward. But a question that I've asked and that I think I know the answer to, but I am very curious what you gentlemen think about it, is if Mamdani, who is getting most of the attention nationally with respect to these election results, and is even the person who the president is being asked about directly and calls out the president directly in his speech, if he'd run in Virginia, if he'd run in New Jersey, could he have won statewide election in those races? And that actually seems really important for actually telling the story of whether or not what the Democrats need to do in order to be viable is to be kind of more like him on policy, which I think is very different than trying to be more like him with respect to the undeniable political talent that he has for communicating, connecting with audiences, leveraging media. It is extraordinary to look at what he managed to do to go from virtually no name recognition whatsoever to defeat not an incumbent mayor, but a man whose name is kind of legend in New York politics. Was he a flawed competitor? For sure. Cuomo ran a very bad campaign after losing that primary in the way that he did. He kind of disappeared from the scene for a month and a half. So losing is one thing, but it's the way that Mamdani managed to win that's really extraordinary. It's the volume of votes. It's the enthusiasm of particularly young voters. And it's the fact that he has kind of captured the attention of the entire country. And a lot of people will be paying attention to see how things turn out, which I think might have some challenges for him because folks know my biases here. I'm a libertarian inclined, deeply skeptical of a number of the propositions that he's run on explicitly. I think the overarching concern about affordability is one thing, but the specific promises of, state-run bodegas and that dramatic minimum wage increases, free childcare, and tax increases in New York, a place that already has an exceptionally high tax burden. This is going to be a very difficult needle to thread. He doesn't have the power to do most of the things he wants to do unilaterally, and it isn't clear that there are people who are ready to be partners. And it also isn't clear that the best way to address an affordability crisis with respect to housing in New York City is with price controls.
Yeah, so I was going to say you actually agreed with everything, and then you kept going. I think the thing that I agree with the most, and I know, Isaac, you've got something queued up too, so I'll make this specific, is that I think the takeaway, if we're trying to search for what should Democrats be doing going into the midterms, what should their party direction be when we see moderates are elected in one place, but people like Mamdani are elected in New York with these huge turnouts, like what's the stronger signal? And the stronger signal, I think, is just the opponent they're running against and the place that they're running in affects the candidate that arises in those circumstances. So Mamdani's running against the incumbent mayor, who is a Democrat, who had to drop out because of scandals and then prompted a legacy person in Cuomo to assume the mantle of the centrist Democrat in a city that's probably only going to be voting for a Democratic mayor. So yeah, he's going to be flanked from the left in that situation. And he's a bad, flawed candidate, so that's where he's vulnerable. In other places, in Virginia, in New Jersey, we see people running against Trump in more moderate centrist ways. I don't think there's any deeper takeaway than that. It's just, this is the candidate that's best suited to win in those circumstances. And if Democrats want to take anything from it, it's just run a quality candidate, run somebody who's going to be good at actually expressing their message to voters, not try to package somebody that feels like the quality of message they want, that inauthenticity will come across. I know that's a word that's going to trigger Kmele, and I'm trying to cue you up, Isaac, but maybe not a wet bag politician, not somebody who's completely uncharismatic, but somebody who has the believability of their positions and then just is in the right situation at the right time.
I want to say I rarely do this. I think I never do this publicly in Tangle or on the podcast, but I don't think I could have punched a ballot for Andrew Cuomo. Well, I lived in New York City during his gubernatorial time when he was governor, and I lived there through the pandemic. like to me, and I think something that is like really an untold story for anybody that's been in the city for 5 years or longer is just like, it's just kind of unforgivable. Like he fell from grace so fast. It was like, I remember those first few weeks being like, oh my God, this is the dude who might save us. And then a year later, it was just like, he's detestable, you know, like he lied. He was so slippery. He screwed so many people. The you know, the lockdowns, all this stuff went on too long. The nursing home debacles, like it was just, it got so gross so quick. And that's without even talking about the fact that he's like, you know, he's sexually harassing people along the way too. Like he's just a scumbag. And like, I don't think, you know, I don't know what I would have done, but I definitely wouldn't have voted for him. And I definitely wouldn't have voted for Curtis Lewa because he's a joke. So like, you know, I don't know. Like I imagine there are many New Yorkers like that. Now, to answer your question directly, maybe a hot take here. I think Zohran Mamdani could have won the New Jersey governor's race, actually. I think Mikey Sherrill ran a terrible campaign. She was uninspired throughout. People across New Jersey seem to be totally lukewarm on her. I'm sure that the fact that she has like centrist moderate politics was appealing to people who didn't want to elect Jack Ciattarelli, who's like a guy who's run and failed to get elected now 3 times in the state. Just like there's something so uninspiring about somebody like that who just like they're just serially in the race and never winning. And he's just that guy. And I don't think he was offering anything new or whatever interesting. There's a lot of really highly educated people in Mamdani who he does really well with, or in New Jersey, which Mamdani does really well with. There's a lot of wealth in New Jersey, especially in the northern parts of the state that has like become Brooklyn South now that he does really well with. And I think he could have turned out low propensity voters in the States. There's huge populations of like, you know, Arab American, Indian American, Asian American throughout New Jersey that like he seems to perform pretty well with. I'm actually not so sure that he would have been a bad candidate in a state like New Jersey. I think he would have run a different campaign. He probably would have focused on some stuff a little differently. But like if he did the things that he did in New York, where he hit the ground and he had this awesome social media campaign, I actually think it's totally plausible that he could have won and turned out a different electorate that would have showed up for him. In Virginia, I don't know. But in New Jersey, I think that there's enough inactive, not activated voters. I don't know exactly what the expression I'm looking for is, but like there are enough inactive voters in New Jersey that he could have gotten off the couch for an off-cycle race with, you know, maybe not this promises he was making in New York, but some big government affordability centered, I'm going to fight Trump promises. And, yeah, I'm not like at all convinced that that's like would have been a totally losing proposition for him.
I actually don't think that's so hot of a take. I think just part of the equation in New Jersey is that we're going to get bad data out of it because last cycle, a lot of people voted for Trump going against the incumbent dissatisfied with Biden and Harris. So we thought that maybe that race was going to be closer than it was. And a lot of people are voting on the Trump referendum. So it's just, there's a lot of junk data coming out of there that's going to make it hard for us to make a huge read one way or the other. I think maybe a more interesting question is, would Mamdani have done better than Sherrill? And I don't know, like that hypothetical, I'm not sure what that would tell us. Because Sherrill ended up winning pretty convincingly, which does sort of tell you probably most Democrats would have done so. And sorry to cut you off, Kmele, though. I know this is sort of your neck of the woods, but it's across the river from you. So maybe you've got some dismissive classist attitudes to spew.
No, you know, I actually would agree with you. I don't know that it is so much of a hard take. And certainly when I say he couldn't have won there, I mean running a race like this, and specifically appealing on these particular issues, talking openly about his kind of DSA sort of roots and aspirations.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. And if you want some more, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And you can also go listen to our podcast, Suspension of the Rules, by finding the Tangle News podcast feed. Just look up Tangle anywhere you listen to podcasts or go to our website, readtangle.com. All right, thanks. Peace.